I'm doing a lot of updates at the minute because it's this time of year when everything really starts moving on. Things grow so quickly. And I just thought I'd go through this again. I just love coming out to this bit. At the moment, this is probably one of my favourite areas. And it's new. It's got my collection of hostas in. And they're looking really, really good. And I managed to stop the slugs. I can see there are some with a bit of slug damage on them, but that's old damage when they were in the garden. But generally, the slugs haven't affected them at all. So they're doing well. I love having big leaved plants in the garden because if you've got a lot of sort of spiky stuff like I have, grasses, etc., then you've really got to offset that with big leaved plants, and hostas do sort of fit that bill perfectly. I've got quite a few in this garden, and as you know, I've been busy pulling them out the garden, but there's still 4 left in the garden, 4 clumps left in the garden. I'm trying to keep there. I'm going to hopefully manage to keep the slugs and snails off them. Or maybe 5 I've got. I've just seen another one in here. That tin there. Remember, that's Empress Wu that I had to protect from the slugs early on because of the slugs. I had to put in that tin. And there's still quite a few holes in there, as you can see, but the slugs are no longer in there. So that's a big leaved one, and that's going to make maybe, well, I reckon it can reach about 4 or 5 foot, that one, if it's in the right position. I don't think it's going to reach that there because it's reliant on me to give it lots of water. But it's a big leaved plant I love to have in the garden. And then I've recently got hold of this Rodgersia. And I did bring one with me up to Grassy Bottom, but I lost it. And that's really because I was moving around. I was digging things out without realising I was digging them out. And I was moving things around. And then we go back to this, Rheum palmatum. And this is about as big as I'm going to get in this garden for leaves. And the tall spires on there are looking absolutely beautiful. That looks great. So that's another big leaved plant that I've got. And like I say, you've got to have big leaf plants in gardens, especially if you've got a lot of finery and lots of grasses. And the other thing I like to put in as well is some of the cow parsley types, or that kind of look with the leaf. I like to put those in as well. What else can we show you? And then there's the smaller leaf types, I guess you could say. And that's Rheum australe. Again, it's flowering. The redness has gone now. It's going more into a creamy red. And that's not as big a leaf, but still good to have. And it's the one that I have to contain in a dustbin because I really don't want that running all over the place. That's another big leaved plant, which offsets the finer grasses. And I'm a big tall plant fan. And Phylloxera's one of those plants that meets my criteria. I like to have tall perennials, and this is here because it matches some of my grasses and it can compete with them. And this one's called Phylloxera Ann, and it really is a beauty. From the minute it starts pushing up in spring till autumn, really, it just has this wonderful look, and it stands well through winter as well as a skeletal form. That's really nice. It's looking good at the minute. It's got flowers at the top there. They're not due to come out for at least another month. And I shall video close up when we get to that stage. And that is really there to compete with this. This is a Molinia. And the Molinias are very early grasses anyway, but they don't start seeding yet. It's a little bit too early. And this particular one is called Wind Sowl. And this one does get up to this post here. The seed heads will reach to that second post on the left. So that's about 8 foot, 7 or 8 foot that I'll make, without a doubt. So I've not really got any big leaved ones around here, which I really ought to, I ought to have really, because I'm doing this video on big leaf plants. But this is a big leaved plant, a big leaved grass. And can you believe the size of that? I've shown this several times because I have to on a regular basis. This is why I'm always out in the garden, because I need to show it. And it's looking great. And I love this one. It has to be one of my favourite grasses based on the size. I like the size of them. And that's Miscanthus salutaria riparius. It's looking great. And it will get as tall as that owl on top of that post, and that sits at 10 foot. And the grass itself should make to at least the base of that owl, if not higher. And I hope for it to get a little bit higher this year. But I don't know. It's looking good at the moment. It's looking promising. We had a good start with the rain, so that's giving it a bit of a boost. And as I've said many times, you must contain that one. Now, I guess you could call this a big leaf plant, but for me, it's not getting very big leaves at the minute. They're usually bigger than this. Other properties I've had the leaf where it's been at least double that size, but it's still a relatively young plant. And I hope that the leaves will get bigger. Now, if I chop that back down, it'll definitely get bigger leaves at the base. And I may have to do that if I want to produce bigger leaves. It seems to be quite happy here. And I think that's because it's protected. And it's well protected. And it's done really well. I was expecting to have to do a video to show you how to look after these, but I don't think that's going to be... Well, I can't do one because it's looked after itself. The only thing I said, as I said, I'm going to have to remove the flower stalk or the seed head stalk, and some of these are going into black now. I'm hoping that some of these are going to self-seed. I've never had them self-seed before, but who knows? And the bamboo, I'm really pleased with this. I was sat down here earlier looking across at this, and it is in its 3rd year now, and it is beginning to leap, which I absolutely love. And it is going to do what I wanted it to do. I reckon that's going to make probably 7 or 8 foot this year, and hopefully more. But next year it'll be even bigger than, or taller than that. And that is wonderful. I love it. I love that one. And it is Robusta, that particular one, but it is a Fargesia. So it is a clump former, as I've said before many a time. But now it's getting up to where I want it. And it's going to thicken out no end over time. Let's just have a quick look in the nook, because this always surprises me now when I open the door. Because of that. Those ferns are just absolutely stunning. And they look absolutely perfect in this section. It's looking good. Managed to get on top of the weeds. Planted another fern. I think that's a Linnaeus type. I did find the label today. I've put it in a bucket and I've got it still. So I'll probably bring it back up here so that I can get used to it. Get used to what it is. So they're looking great. Which one's this? Drypteris the King. This has got to be Drypteris the King because it's got the crowny look on top. And that's how it gets its name, because that looks like a crown on top. I think it is. It could be Robusta. I did have a label somewhere. There's a label here, but I don't think that's it. Drypteris fillers. Yeah. Now this one here. This one here is Drypteris affinis Robusta. And I've got several of those in here. But the one I've just shown you is Drypteris the King. And it just looks wonderful. I'm in this area. The light's starting to go now. But this area looks absolutely wonderful. It's a bit of a secret area. It was called the Secret Garden, if you remember. But now it's called the Nook. And I love it. Absolutely love sitting in this area. And we've got nothing really big leaved in here, nothing broad leaved. I guess hostas would do that. But again, I think down here I'd struggle to keep on top of the slugs. So I'm quite happy for the ferns to do that job. And things like Drypteris the King, the Finnish the King, is it will make it to about 4 foot, if not 5 foot. I have had it at 4.5 foot before at a previous address. And that's only its, what, second, third year in here. It's doing really well. I just love the upright look of those. They look great. Calamagrostis brachytricha that I told you about is doing well. Another fern that's doing well, that's Robusta again. Drypteris affinis Robusta. Was it affinis? Let's make sure I'm telling you the right thing. She'll be moaning at me. There we go. And that's what that one is as well. So, have I got another Drypteris the King? Yeah, I have. I've got another one. So, this one as well. This is Drypteris the King. You can see again that crown on top. That's what gives it away. I'd like to put more and more ferns in here because then we can have a real lush tropical look about it. Now this euphorbia is doing nice now. Whistleberry garnet. I'm quite happy to leave it in. You can see why it's called whistleberry garnet. That colour. That's a beautiful colour. I shall probably pop those seed heads off before it gets too seed around because I don't want too much of it because it is going to run anyway. Anyway, right, so nothing else in there that we can really talk about. Still got to finish this area. It's not finished by a long chalk, that one. I still need to get a load of bark chips down there for now and get that going. So this is the shack and it's the back of the shack. And I know I film from here now and again. And I do have bird boxes up all over the place and there is a sparrow nesting in that one. And it had a blue tit last year and I think a blue tit the year before that as well. This is quite a big leaved viburnum. Not looking great at the minute because it's going through this phase where I said before you just simply touch them and they'll fall off and all these will drop off. This is the point where it starts shedding leaves and it'll lose them, then it'll get bigger, a bigger plant, and the leaves over time will get maybe twice the size of that over time. The flowers looking great at the minute. I do like viburnum flowers. I mean, it's quite a wacky look really when you see the leaves like that. People think it's dying away, but it's not. So this bit here, I just love this bit. I've had a fresh idea for this today, just something little and wacky that I mind to tempt. I'll not reveal all just yet. I'll keep that as a secret at the moment, but I think it'll work. Looking at that. Hydrangea, quercifolia, and this does have quite a big leaf. Not massive. I mean, compare it to my hand. It will get bigger over time, and the wetter it is, the bigger that will get as well. If you're in a drier area, don't worry, that will still grow. Just not as big as it should. And the Acer, that's Trompenborg. Love that. That's gonna look really good in about 3 years. I think that will really start looking good. I've moved it several times and it ended up here in, I think it was October of last year, maybe even into November. I wanted it in this area because it suits it a lot better, and it's definitely paid off putting it here. And the hydrangea I put here last year, and it's paid off to put both those two there. And I talked about moving maybe one of them, but I'm actually not going to move them at all. I'm not even going to move this one here, which is a honeysuckle, which is more of a shrubby honeysuckle really. I'm not really going to move that either because I think they're all going to get to different heights, and I think with selective pruning I think I'm going to be able to make those look great anyway. Now going back to tall perennials, this is amongst my favourites. It's called Helianthus salicifolius. No, sorry, it's not Augialis, this particular one. And there's another one called Salicifolius you may have heard of, and that's commonly called the Afghan hound plant. And this is his kind of rougher cousin, so it's a bit more sturdy. But I've had to put this up because at the moment I've not had them in this garden long enough to see if they can actually hold their own, and they should be able to hold their own. A lot of people cut them back at this time of year, so they only get half the size, and that definitely stops the flopping of them. But they are strong enough and robust enough, they shouldn't flop. But a couple of seasons now, I've had this in here, and it seems to have wanted to flop, and I think it could be partly due to the fact that this was a vegetable garden many years ago by a lady who actually lived here for well over 50 years, apparently. So that could be contributing. So here we go. This is another Miscanthus lutaria riparius. And I've put it in this tin. And I love this, people. If you can get hold of this one, I would, if you're really into big grasses, this is the one to go for. It dwarfs Miscanthus giganteus. Definitely dwarfs it. And if you do contain it, well, you must contain it. Never mind if you do, you've got to contain it. Get yourself a watering can next to it and put a couple of gallons on every second or third day, and that will really get away and really help it, because it really does like that. And the name, I think, refers to it being living by the waterside, something like that. And we've got a hosta next to it, and I think this is guacamole, or supposed to be guacamole, but I'm not seeing any change in the colour just yet, and it seems that the slugs are missing this one. They don't seem to have found it. Famous last words. Ah, there's another fern here. I think I will pull that fern out because it's not, it is a Dryopteris, but it's not a Finis the King, which will get really tall and would look good in there actually. But I think I'll put that into the nook. Everything's romping away, hence me coming out here and showing you. Now this is a Calamagrostis that I like you to see from time to time, and I do urge you to get one of these, Calamagrostis acutiflora Carl Forster, and it is a lovely statuesque plant, a columbular again, and it'll make 6 or 7 foot in seed eventually. And I only put that one in as a tiny little 2-leaf plant in the autumn, and here we are. What is it now? 3 foot, and it's gonna flower. It'll only have about, looking at that, 6 or 7 flowers this year. Won't matter at all. That'd be great. And the euphorbias, they just seem to keep flowering, a bit like the bruneras I keep going on about. They just seem to keep flowering, and I can't understand it. I think it might be due in part to some of the plant grow I put down, but actually I didn't put any in this area, only up at the top end of there. I put some there and around this plant here as well actually, but that gets a lot of water, that rheum, and look at it, it's huge, absolutely huge. And it's next to a Persicaria there, and this Persicaria was given to me, and again from the person who gives me them, who doesn't have labels. She tends to give me the ones she doesn't have labels for, but we think it's Amplexicalis, and I'm not going to really try and name it because I think it's Firetail, so I might as well name it. I think it's Firetail, but I don't know for sure, so don't like to commit to that. So as I said, I like big, tall perennials because they go with my grasses, they go with my Miscanthus. Miscanthus can be very, very big, very, very tall, so I try and get tall perennials to match. And here's another one of the Elianthus, and this is Salicifolius, and I am going to, again, contain this one because I know this one often flops. But I did have it at a previous address, and I gave it 2 gallons of water every second or third day, as I said earlier, and it held quite firm and stiffly upright. It didn't really flop at all, and I think that's absolutely due. Somebody's got a problem with the car. And I think it's due to the fact that it had loads of water, because it does like a lot of water, that particular plant. Now this is this is Rosa Gertrude Jekyll, and it is absolutely covered in flowers at the moment. They're going to be hundreds this year. It's going to be the best year ever for it, and I've given it a good feed early on again. Very important to get them fed early, and this is going to make quite a tall climber. It can be a shrub and it can be a It can be a climbing rose. It can do both. It's quite versatile like that. I love it. I just love the colour. I love the colours of these. I mean, look at that. I love those red colours that they have when they're growing new. It kind of appeals to me more than the flowers do. Well, oh yeah, there's another Calamagrostis here, and that's a single specimen. And I've said before, I keep that as a single specimen there. It does really well there, that particular one. It likes it, and I keep it there because I like to show you the difference between a single specimen and then a clump, so you can see that equally they both look good. And it's next to this Viburnum Davidi. And Viburnum Davidi is kind of a long, skinny-leaved thing, as you can see. It's not massive, but if you can see how plant association really works in this bit. So we've got the upright of the grass, and then we've got the stumpy look of the Viburnum, and that's Davidi. And it shouldn't get much taller than that wall that's behind it. A little bit taller than that, but it shouldn't. The true Davidi should not get very big at all. And don't forget, I've said before, there are seed-raised varieties of it, so they're going to be different sizes in general, but they should always remain fairly squat and spreading rather than tall and upright. Another Oster. Which one's this? Not sure which this one is. It could be another Guacamole, but I can't tell. Guacamole, rather. I can't tell till later on because the colour will come into it later in the summer. And it has kind of a bluish, I think it's a bluish sort of stripe in here. But funnily, it doesn't turn, or is it yellow? I don't know. Anyway, so we go back to this, and we go back to this one here, and it's an elder. It's a Sambucus, and it was nice to get a message from a lady called Joan Elder. I think it's a girl. Could be a bloke, I don't know. Joan Elder, I'm going to assume it's a lady. And she's managed to get hold of one of these. And Joe, this is what you're going to be getting, and it is a stunner. It truly is. It looks brilliant here, and it'll soon be flowering. But I love it. It's a tall one again, so it's a tall shrub that can fit into most gardens because it stays really thin, as the name suggests. It's Black Tower, and it looks good from any position in this garden now because it's got tall enough. And there's a little baby down there that you can just make out, and there's one the other side of the floating deck, and I've got another one actually in the area we've just visited. So I love it that much. So big leaves, very important. You can see from that how important these big leaves are. They kind of make sense in your garden. So if you've got lots of little itty-bitty bobby plants that a lot of people do, and little flowery things, then simply by putting some big leaved plant in there, you can kind of break that down, and you give your eye somewhere to rest, which is why you should put them in. Now, you can appreciate I'm not a big flower man. I've lots of flowers about to develop in late summer. But on the whole, we just have sporadic bursts of colour from flowers. And apart from that, I have leaves, really. I go for form and structure, really. This is what I prefer. Now, we're beginning to lose a bit of the light, so I'm going to have to wrap this one up. But we'll go to this. And here's the other Calamagrostis, Carl Forster. And it's looking great, and I keep a lot of them in this border along with these Allium Summer Drummer, and they're not there yet. They're going to get taller, but this year it's looking the best it's ever looked. It's looking absolutely stunning. I love it, and that is now really coming into flower. That's Crataegus Paul Scarlet, looking great, especially against the ordinary hawthorn, the white form. And we'll end with this one, because I'm just amazed at how tall this has got now. I have now measured this officially, and it is 3.5 feet. No, sorry, I've lied. It's 4.5 feet. Now, Kathy didn't think that was 4.5 feet, so I went and got a pole, measured it. I've marked the pole out in feet, and it's about 4.5 feet. That I've never ever seen Aquilegias get that tall. Maybe you have, I don't know. And it's so floriferous this year. There's 3 of them, the same type in this border, and I've left them here. And this is the more mature specimen, so hopeful that next year maybe they'll do the same. I love them, even though the reds go downwards. You can't really make them out, the flowers. The fact that there's so many of them on there just lifts it. Absolutely beautiful. 4.5 foot Aqualegias. Could you believe it? So there we go. Just a little bit on the garden, and I'm loving it. I'll keep coming out pretty regular because I need to, because the garden will romp away every day. I'll find that there's at least 6 inches growth on certain plants. It goes that fast at this time of year. Okay, I'll talk to you on the next one. Ta-da.